Hey, welcome back to Noggin Notes, you loyal and faithful listening audience. My name is Jake Wiskershin. I'm your host. We just celebrated our 100th episode last time, and I hope you heard it because it was awesome. I talked with our founder, Safiso, and learned about his inner workings and what motivated him to create Noggin Notes and share it with the world. Today's episode is no less spectacular. We interview Jessika Alexander, and she's got a really compelling story that's simultaneously, I think, vulnerable, heartbreaking, uplifting, inspiring, encouraging, depressing, and motivational. So I think you're going to enjoy it. She's really a remarkable young woman, and I'm really, really honored to have interviewed her and being a part of this journey. And as a tease, after we got off the podcast, what we talked about afterward on the phone was that we will probably have another interview with her later on to discuss some of the more physiological aspects of what she does, because I think it's just fascinating. And this show being, centered on mental health, but also broadly about health in general, I think it has a real place. So I'm excited to talk to her again when she comes back in a couple of months. So in the meantime, I really hope you enjoy this interview. I know I did. I was just I couldn't have been more on the same page with a person who is not of the clinical background that most of us have that I hang out with. So I thought she was great, and I'm really excited to share this with you guys. As always, the podcast is brought to you by Noggin Notes. This is the Noggin Notes podcast. It's brought to you by Zephyr Wellness. It's a company that I co-own in Reno, Nevada with my co-owner, Lindsay Bell. And we're doing some cool things. You can check out zephyrwellness.org. It's also brought to you by Audible. And if you don't know Audible, please go to audibletrial.com/nogginnotes and download your free 30-day trial subscription, during which you can download a free audiobook. And even if you choose to cancel inside those 30 days, you get to keep the audiobook. Audible has an unmatched selection of audiobooks and different audio files that you can access, from comedy to news to entertainment, and then, of course, the books themselves. So audibletrial.com/nogginnotes helps us out, helps you out, gets you access to an incredible library of material, and we get to keep producing. So audibletrial.com/nogginnotes, if you would please. Free 30-day trial. They're an Amazon company, which gives them an incredible reach to gather lots of content. Without further ado, I will stop talking, and I will give you this program, my interview with Jessika Alexander on the Noggin Notes podcast. Enjoy. Well, today we have the pleasure of speaking with Jessika Alexander, and that's Jessika with a K. And I don't know that I've ever actually met a Jessika with a K, but it's Jessika. So if you want to look her up, make sure you spell it right. Jessika, hello.
Hi.
Glad to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and it's been a while. We initially set this up some time ago, and then life interfered. And
Life did. I'm so glad we're finally doing this.
yeah, I'm stoked. And I don't know whether you reached out to us or Safiso reached out to you. I can't remember. Do you remember?
I actually got connected to you from the One A Day mental health podcast.
Oh,
I was
that's
on
right.
there, and they were like, "Hey, I think they reached out to you about me," but I'm glad that they did.
That's so
podcast
rad.
was amazing.
Yeah, for sure. How did that come about, by the way?
The podcast with them, they reached out to me. I had just started doing my talks called Strength Through Pain, which are based on trauma in the body and just talking to people and educating them on how trauma affects the body. And so I posted about that and some little blurbs from that, and I did a big talk in Seattle at an athletic conference, and I think they saw that and were like, "Hey, we wanna know what that's about," and so they reached out, and
Nice.
I was very honored.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we should probably start by introducing you, because we didn't do that. We just kind of started talking. You're a Nike master trainer, right? That's your title, I guess.
So I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm an athletic performance specialist, and then I'm also, a Nike trainer. Yeah. So I work with all different types of humans and athletes. I train people through strength training and different performance methods, and I try to help them become better at their sport or just in life in general. And I love it.
That's cool. How did you become a trainer at all? Because strength and conditioning sounds really fun for people like me who played sports their whole lives and spent my entire life in the gym basically. But I don't even know what the path would be to do that. I just feel like I'm some dude who kind of stumbled into a lot of knowledge by accident. But you actually probably went to school for it.
It's interesting you say that. I have a very non-traditional background, and I would say getting into training is actually a really big part of my story. I would say it was the first step to a lot of my personal healing. And so, yeah, I played sports in high school here and there. I was always really active in athletics, but my journey actually did start later. And then, after I was prolific in it, it helped change my life. I wanted to be able to change other people's lives. Strength training really helped me embody myself and learn how to have boundaries and learn how to work towards something and keep with something and set goals and things like that. And it also physically just made me feel better. And so after that, after I had my own journey, I was like, wow, I really want to do this for other people. And then started the journey into becoming more into athletics and getting educated and going that route.
That's pretty cool. And where did Nike come into all this?
Nike came in later. I'd been training, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, originally. And I'm proud of that. I love my hometown. And yeah, Nike kind of scouted me a little bit in Atlanta. So I was training there. That's where I started. I've been training for about maybe 4 or 5 years. And then I got connected with someone at Nike HQ, which is in Portland, Oregon. So Nike World Headquarters. And they scouted me there. And then I came out and connected with trainers there and kind of just wiggled my way in. And did interviews, and then they hired me, and now I've been working there for the last 4 years, and been affiliated with Nike for the last.
So I'm detecting this theme throughout your life that basically suggests that there is no magic bean. There's no easy path. You didn't just rub elbows with the right person one day and became where you are today. And I think there's a real good lesson in that too, is that hard work and commitment really carry a long way.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. I just was having a couple conversations. I had a few people reach out to me about how did you get where you are, and how do what's asking all the questions. And I love that, and I'm honored sitting where I'm sitting that people even want to know that. And I carry a lot of imposter syndrome where I'm like, oh, you want to know my opinion? What? But that's a really big theme. There really is no magic pill. There is no one right path. For me, it's always been being very intentional. I've always I had to detach from this identity now that I'm sitting where I'm sitting, but for a long time, I definitely identified as the underdog. I didn't have a traditional education background. I didn't have anyone in my life elevating me to get where I want to go. And I just kind of showed up places and wouldn't leave. And I was willing to be the dumbest person in the room and ask the questions and work really hard. And that's how I've gotten to the place I'm in now. And that's how, hard work, dedication, and just the willingness to always learn and go for it. You kind of have to get 10 no's to get one yes, So.
Yeah, I think the last 2 points that you made there, which are willing to be, willing always to learn. I think to paraphrase it, you said be the dumbest person in the room. And I think that's a lesson that's lost in a lot of people who maybe have done something for a really long time and got really comfortable at it. They tend to slip into a position of, I don't want to say expertise or know-it-all, but we stop being curious. And curiosity breeds a lot of humility, and with humility comes a lot of openness to receiving new information. So I think that's a really cool key that you mentioned. And then there's the other point that doesn't often go hand in hand with working hard and commitment, which is risk taking. where,
Yeah.
you said, for every 10 no's, you might get a yes. Well, you got to ask. And I don't think a lot of people are asking that many times because we're just so conditioned to avoid what we perceive as failure, because we align failure with being bad ourselves. And that's not true at all. If anything, I mean, I think failure repeatedly, as long as you're not failing at the same thing and not learning from it, which speaks to the humility and the curiosity. I think failure actually begets a more well-rounded and probably more resilient person. So, if you listen to this and you're hearing, hard work, commitment, dedication, like, you might be tempted to rebel a little bit against that and say, well, I've worked the same job hard. I've been committed for the last 20 years and, I don't have whatever success you might want or whatever. But are you taking risks? And are you also staying humble and curious and willing to learn from people you wouldn't maybe necessarily think you could learn from? I think those are really good points.
Yeah, it's really, really important. I think people let their egos get in the way. And, maybe afraid to be vulnerable about where they sit, or they're like, oh, well, I know this is the way because I did such and such. A lot of the baby trainers that I bring up, I actually prefer experience over education sometimes because everything can be learned. But are you willing? Do you have the experience? Are you willing to immerse yourself in something and be open to new ideas? And that's really important to me. You can always learn something. I learn stuff and all the time. I'll go to a random class, I'm traveling and I'll go to a random fitness class and be in there in the middle of, nowhere or something and just taking a strength class. And the way that a coach says something or cues something or puts something together, I'm like, damn, so smart. You just never know. I say that because, people always want to get under in the biggest realms, but you have to be open to opportunity everywhere. And also learning from anyone. And I think for me, I say that and it's it does take a lot of risk taking, but it took me a long time to be willing to get there. I don't want to say I've always had a lot of grit and willing to work hard. But being able to stand in my own and take risks and be okay with failure, it took a lot of work in my emotional realm for sure before I was able to really stand in that. It didn't just happen.
Right. And you made a reference to imposter syndrome. And for those of you who may not be familiar with that term, it's a term that's gotten some traction and popularity lately, especially in my circle, where psychotherapists, I think, as a whole, are very unconfident people. we're a lot of wounded healers who are working through our own garbage, and so whenever we elevate or we see somebody else elevate to a position of quote unquote importance or authority, we start to second guess whether or not we belong there. And that's basically what imposter syndrome speaks to, is this idea that you yourself are not confident being wherever it is that you are because you think you don't deserve it somehow, or you haven't earned it. And I think the idea that you can step into that and embrace it and stand on it confidently and say, yeah, I do belong at this table with wherever you are, with whoever you're sitting, is super important to that continued success. So it's a really interesting balance between confidence and humility. And I think we really want to try to speak that into people and say, you are good enough. You are worthy. You are absolutely lovable and worth affection and adoration and praise. And you haven't arrived yet. So stay hungry.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful way to put it. I think because that is something that I struggle with immensely, given my background. I always say, I'm so grateful to be where I am, because I always say, quote unquote, I'm not supposed to be here. What I mean by that is I look back on my past and go, wow, I can't believe I've made it here, even here now. And I'm so grateful, and having that gratitude, and then also being able to say, okay, but I want to go further. And, you have to be willing to find that balance, like you're saying, and have, that, like I said, imposter syndrome is something I struggle with. And so being able to be authentic and know that that's going to get you, further than anything else, and be vulnerable about your authenticity and what you do and don't know, and kind of standing in that and being open. So I think that's super, super true.
Yeah, not putting yourself down along the way. I appreciate that you shared, you said, you from where you came, you don't believe that you're standing where you are. And I want you to talk about that, because we kicked off this program by talking about the idea of trauma in the body and how it affects the body and physiology. And one of the notes that I had written down that I wanted to address with you is the connection that you see between physical health and mental well-being. I mean, it's Noggin Notes. It's a mental health show, but we also branch out into many other various areas of life because all